Hi, hi everybody. Welcome. Just a quick introduction before we start. I'm Matteo. I work with Amelie in Associazione Culturale. We curated a lot of panels in this space focused on children comic books. And this is a very special event for us because we wanted to have like an overview on the international landscape on comic books, which is something that is growing very fast, and we are very excited to have this talk with amazing people and amazing publishers, which I thank so much for being here. So from your left to your right, we have Rita Furster now of Rodpol Press. We have Frédéric Gauthier from La Pastec, and we have Olivier Brown from Édition 2024. Almost, my French is very poor. And to talk with them, we have the amazing Sonia Deschamps, which is the artistic director of the Festival International de la Bande Dessinée d'Angoulême. So it's a very nice overview of the landscape in this sense. So thank you all for being here. It's amazing, and thank you to the fair for having us, and a special thank you to ICE for allowing us to invite you here, and to the Bando Promozione Fumetto instituted by the Direzione Creatività Contemporanea of the Ministry of Culture that allowed us to build this year Billboard Bull and all these kind of cultural activities. One quick question before we start. How many of you do not understand English? Quanti di voi non capiscono l'inglese? Per alzata di mano. Fantastic. So we can go all English, full English. Fantastic. That's going to be way easier, and so I think we're okay. Thank you so much. So I leave you to our guest. Thank you again.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. So all in English. I don't speak English that well, so I'm counting on you three to act as if my questions were intelligible and intelligent and everything, because I'm not quite sure I'll be able to give details, precise questions, but I'm sure your answer will be perfect. So to start, maybe everybody doesn't know the story of your publishing house. So maybe we can quickly present the three of them. Maybe starting with Frédéric and La Pastec. La Pastec has been created in 1998, if I don't make any mistake.
Yes.
You were two librarians. Maybe can you tell us how you created La Pastec and how the comic books for young people came into this story?
So we created La Pastec 23 years ago. And at the start, we just did graphic novels for adults. There was no production for kids. But working with illustrators, creators of comics, they expressed the will to do comics for kids as well. And so we expanded into kids' comics, but it appeared a bit backward because our first project were a cross between a picture book and a comics. For us, we don't care if it's called either one or the other, but the narrative work in them is close to the mindset of a comic book creator. So the first book we did was Harvey by Janice Nadeau and Hervé Bouchard. We mix a very well-known writer from Quebec, Hervé Bouchard, with a super talented illustrator, Janice Nadeau, and we deconstructed all of our usual work in the illustration for kids. And we ended up with a long format picture book that we call comics now, but I think it's close to 200 pages book. The book won very numerous awards, so it gave us a sense that we were doing something good. So then the first few years we played along that line between the picture book and the comics. There's no specific grid. People call comics, with speech bubbles and the traditional grid. So it's usually very illustrated, spread. going from one form to the other. And then we work on a book called Jane, the Fox and Me by Isabelle Arsenault and Fanny Britt. And that book opened the international door for us. It was a very free will book, very incredibly well crafted, where Isabelle played with full page illustration, but the rest is closer to traditional comics. So slowly but surely, maybe 10 years in our history, we started to play more close to the more classic comic books for kids. And now we are, I don't know, producing maybe a few 5 or 6 titles a year with artists from Quebec or France or elsewhere. And I think it's an expanding market, but we always go through putting the creator's will or vision first and foremost, not aiming at something specific in any markets.
And you follow your authors, because you mentioned Isabelle Arsenault, but you also work with Guillaume Perrault, Elodie Chanta, Rémi Simard, and a lot of authors with whom you continue working, and it's like long relationships.
Yes, it's important for us to develop that, and we can accompany them also in different kind of projects, but most of the name you mentioned, it's people we work on a longer form, and their project is getting also a new life, like Guillaume Perrault with Le Facteur de l'Espace is going to become an animated series. We did an audio radio show with it. So Guillaume is very willing and loves to expand his universe as well, but we always give them the more freedom they want. I mean, the number of pages, the format, everything is open for them as long as we keep the vision in the final book.
Olivier, can you present 2024 and tell us why and how you decided a few years ago, 2-3 years, to create 4048, the collections for kids?
Yeah. Hi. I think I will repeat exactly the same thing than Fred, but in a way lower English. And we created 2024 in 2010. Simon Lieberman and I were just. It was just after an art school. We made an art school in illustration. So at the beginning, we wanted to do comics. We were also very proactive in the small graphic scene, and after school, well, we wanted to continue to do some objects. Okay, let's try to be a little more professional than when we were students, but the idea was to have a structure, able to publish 1 or 2 books each year, not losing too much money, and saving time to do our own projects. But books, things went quickly quite different because the books work.
It takes time.
Huh?
It takes time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and okay, we are spending all our time on the books, so we have to live with it. So okay, and I would say it have taken maybe 4 or 5 years between the beginning and the moment that we really decide to have a publishing house. And I think the first bestseller of the publishing house was Jim Curious. It was in 2012, and it was already a young comics book, but for a long time we didn't separate, just publishing the books we had the will to do, and I think it's after 10 years, maybe something like that, we were a little bigger than at the beginning, and we felt that the librarians need us to be more clear and to have, okay, I think this one has to go in this bookshelf, and this other one in the other one. And it's not often it's not the same librarians who care about comics and care about children's books. So creating 4048 was a way to help our books to be more
identified and
Yeah.
accessible?
Exactly. And but well, the first one was Le Roi de la Lune in 2019, and we are doing, I would say, 3 or 4 children books each year, 8 or 10 comic books each year.
And we'll talk about adults reading children books because it's a real question. I think it's something that when you are, I'm not a publisher, I don't publish books for kids, but when you're in a jury or things like that, you're always thinking, what am I judging? Am I judging me as an adult reading a children's books, or am I thinking about the children reading the books? But maybe, Rita, if you can tell us about Rotopole, and maybe because you're an author too, you're also co-founder of the publishing house. Maybe you can tell us, as they did, how it was born and when children's books came in it.
Yes. There are quite some parallels to your stories as well. I founded the publishing house while I was still studying at art school. I studied illustration there, and I just had the feeling that there was quite a gap between what I saw at art school, the ways and approaches of graphic storytelling that we were all interested in, or some students were interested in, what was happening around me, and then what was actually visible in bookstores, at book fairs, with the publishers back then. That was in 2006, so it's a while ago. A lot changed since that, so there's a more vibrant independent scene now. But back then, I thought it was really, well, sad actually. So my idea was to found a publishing house that could work as a tool to bring visibility to the books and ideas that I was excited about. And then going from there, having the possibility to operate on a publishing level, the publishing house developed into an independent publishing house together with some fellow students at the beginning, and then since 2015 I'm running the publisher by myself. And so coming from that side, I always put also the authors and illustrators a little bit in the center of what we are doing and how we are doing decisions, like creating a working atmosphere, a working possibility for them to bring their ideas and stories, and also their experiments with graphically telling a story into the center and bringing these into the form of a book of printed paper. And so it happened that in the beginning it was really just about finding exciting work or picking up exciting work and bringing it, giving it a platform, not thinking in genres at all for the first years, also at the same time professionalizing, becoming a publisher and editor actually, like learning all these steps that you do not know when you study to become an illustrator, just getting to know the other side of it. And so our range of books was mostly comic books, graphic poetry, illustrated books for an adult audience, graphic novels, some also, and some formats that were really in between genres or things that you would think from a market structure of. And as we also continue the relationships with our authors, we like to publish their works, follow up, and maybe not all of their books are published with us, also with other German publishers, so where you can see maybe a book fits better into their program, but then still staying with us. And it just happened that especially Thomas Wellman, we did 6 books now together. He started to work on a children's comic series called Nika Lotte Mangold. And with that, it became clear that the demands of bookstores and distribution and also for the press work are a bit different. So we thought, okay, we have to frame it all so that we have children's comics now in our program. Although some of our other books also work very well for young adults or teenagers or a reading age maybe starting at 14 years. For these, we thought, okay, we have to create more a home within the publishing house for these books, and by now we also do publish picture books, but also children's comics. Yes.
But isn't it hard to say for what age is a book, because as a journalist, sometimes I was looking at on the website of publishers to know how they were seeing the books they were publishing, and it depends so much of the reader that it's always reducing to say, okay, it's for 6 to 9 or things like that. I think about Le Club des Amis, Sophie Guérive, who published also Tulipe in 2024. I love Le Club des Amis. I'm not a children, not anymore, but it's something hard now to. I understand the fact that for the librarian and for the journalist, it's important to know how you're seeing, but how do you deal as publisher with that constraint?
Constraint. Speaking for us, we didn't think about, okay, who will be the public at first. Let's do the book and we'll see after that who has to read it. And it's always very difficult to stop. Okay, you cannot read it before 3, after 6. It's kind of a game you have to play to be identified, but it's always very vague. And I would say, well, I've spoken with librarians recently about that, and in fact, there is some of there is some ages where at which the kids are very concerned about certain problems, and it can have some sense because, okay, it's a book about the death, and it's usually a question asked by the kids between this age. And but I am not aware of this kind of things at all. So we are starting to consult children's book librarians to help us to do that. But it's not the way we think.
No, it's pretty similar. We don't, while creating the books, we don't frame it for any age group. But when the need comes for marketing or whatever, presenting to librarians or putting it in a catalog, but we do in more an open-ended version of it. We identify the base, supposedly the base age, and then it's free up. We don't do like from 6 to 9. We made from 6 and whatever, but it's not an easy task indeed. But also, what's happening recently is that we, as publishers, we identify sometimes that in our catalog we should develop maybe more for younger readers, say, because most of our comics for kids or young reader were aimed at maybe 10 and up. So now we're trying to work with our creators if they want to reach first readers. So, but we don't put too much constraint. I mean, it's an aim. As you mentioned earlier, I mean, we're not in the mindset of the kids ourselves, but we have ideas now with our experience. We can identify ways to address specific subject or concerns with kids, but it's not framed farther than that. I mean, we'll give more liberty to the creation.
Rita?
Yeah, so with us it's similar that we give a suggestion for a starting reading age, and there we somehow talk with the authors, also in the team, and with our experiences, also with the distributors, and we just see like if there are certain points that resonates with the children's lives at a certain age, like for example, like school as a surrounding is not so interesting for a child who's not in school already, like all the social events happening there. So we just try to see like how there are maybe connections to the children's reality for topics, but also for setups, characters, and the structure of the story, the complexity of the story also. But I think our books, and I would say yours as well, they have an open end because they always include layers that are also interested interesting. The stories themselves are interesting for everyone. They are not limited on a child's perspective, and a lot of books have layers that adult readers can get also, or maybe enrich their reading experience, especially for books that are maybe read to children, so that like everyone can be entertained and enjoy the story. It's not limited on a certain age, I think. So this is a little bit how we try to handle this demand of a structure that is coming more from the outside, actually, but trying to navigate through that.
And I said before that as a jury for some prizes, and it was the case here in Bologna, you have this question, do I like it with my adult eyes? If I put this book in children of 6, 7, 8, really like it, really also? We answered yes, of course, everybody is going to love Bibiville, for example, because we can see it. Is it a question you are you do you have the same question as publisher when you're working with authors about their books, about how do we create for kids, how are we still connected to the feelings of the kids? Is it a question also that comes in your mind?
Yes, but it depends on the creator. So in Quebec, there's a big circuit of touring in schools for the creators, illustrators, so they get to connect and to discuss with kids about their ideas even before sometimes doing the books themselves. So they have already did a little test, pitching their ideas. But sometimes they need to be a discussion. And you know, our kids, my kids are older now. I cannot test it with them anymore, but some of the creators have kids, and they will, you know, just test a few elements, like maybe the characters look, or maybe the idea of the story, but we won't go that farther than that. It's just testing around like this, yeah.
Rita, you are doing a workshop also, no, with a lot of publics.
Yes, I also teach and give workshops for children also, and I think it's enriching just their own perspective to work with children on their stories and on their topics and how they tell the stories. Of course, it doesn't mean that as an author you have to tell it the same way, because they're of course also interested in having a new perspective. So it's not like taking that over, but it gives a nice insight also, and is inspiring just to also bring these experiences back into the editorial process with the authors. And some of our authors also do workshops or do have own children, but I think many of them also do have a strong connection to their own inner child, so they can somehow go back to that place and can recreate the excitement or the fears or the questions that they maybe had at a certain age, and then bring it into a form that makes it experienceable for children today.
Olivier, we saw some pages of Bibiville from Eponine Côté, who won the Ragazzi Award for 6 to 9, I think. Can you tell us about this book, maybe, and how you decided to publish it? It's a first book? It's a first book from Eponine?
Yeah, it's a first book from Eponine. She was one of my students. I used to teach a little bit from time to time in La Haute École des Arts du Rhin, well, a school in Strasbourg, and well, she always had these very, very cute characters, and but it took many years for her to structure this universe. And okay, what kind of story could I tell with them? And I think it's interesting because for a long time she didn't know if she will do a book for the children or adults. She wanted to speak about architecture and some kind of the urbanistic way of thinking a city. But of course, these characters put her through their to encourage her to, when we encourage her to make a children's book with that, but
because there are animals, cats and dogs,
and
cute cat and dogs.
Very, very cute cat and dogs. So it's very colorful, very funny, and I think it's lovely for the children. But for a long time, in her own mind, she didn't know if she. Well, what I want to say is that the sense of the book could have been for adults in a slightly different way, but not so much. And after that, the work is to be understandable by a kid and try to keep simple, the simple. Yeah.
The thing is, we were talking about library a few minutes ago. Parents are buying books for the children, but there are success who came from the, I don't know how to say, cours de récré. La cour de récré? Recreation, school recreation. I think about Tita a few years ago, Mortel Adèle now. How can, as publisher, can we deal with this I don't know how to say in English, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked this question. How can we deal with that? I mean, between what can be the expectations of kids and putting in their hands things that not to take this place, but for more lectures and more maybe less evident for them when they saw it in library, or that they took less in school or everything. But how do you look at this big success when you're creating? That's why we were saying a few minutes ago, exigent books, maybe less, I don't know how to say, less accessible, but because the books I was talking about are in, I don't know, in supermarkets and everything. How do we do with all that? And I'm sorry, it's not at all a question, but I let you give an intelligent answer to that silly question.
I think it's quite dangerous to think about what does the children expect. Well, anyway, it's not the way creators think, and say it's most about what can I bring, and okay, if a lot of children want to have it, good, and I wouldn't run if a tit of success arrives, but you cannot schedule this kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. It's impossible to know in advance what kids would love and what they would want to see. Sometimes it's a big surprise. In Quebec, there's a very popular comics for kids called, the creator is Alex A, La Jean Jean. And I know it didn't translate in France, for example, so sometimes it's very specific to a very peculiar market. But when it catches on, it can go crazy. So, but we never aim for that, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's always about making the best book possible with the idea and the material that you have. And in my experience for this difference between adults buying books for children rather than children picking themselves, I think there's a great importance of the book retailers actually, who create maybe formats that make books available, accessible for children, so that they can maybe choose or have a decision about that. So we also run a small bookstore, and we can tell, like, some parents are very open. The children can browse the shelves also that are very low, so that they have, can have a look at the books themselves. And there are quite some nice formats also to bring books and children together. And then maybe nice parents or adults will pick up that then. But you really have to rely on that as a publisher. It's a bit more complicated to create this direct relationship, except in maybe an exhibition or a workshop, like something you would do alongside the publishing. Yeah.
And also, as you know, the festivals are very important in that. So kids come and they will make their own choice as well. And we also have a bookstore ourselves in Montreal, and so we see kids coming with their parents, and they pick some books themselves. Sometimes it's just the look of it, or they heard about it, but it's important for the books to be reachable for kids, for sure.
And you were talking about kids coming in festival and everything. I often heard that creating for kids as an author, it's particular because they go straight to the point. I mean, if they like, they love. If they don't like at all. They won't say, okay, I'm not quite sure, I like it. But is it something that you also like in the fact of publishing books for kids? Is the connection with them and how they react and how the readers they are?
Yes, I also, especially when doing events, like book events, this is something really, really nice, like doing readings, maybe also including actors or props or music, for example. Then it's really possible, like the audience is completely different. And I think a lot of our authors also do like this element, like this interactive element that you can create maybe after reading, do some live drawing and create a little scene together with the children, and they being involved and just open at that moment and not behaving as an audience that has a lot of experience in being an audience probably. And so I think that's always a very nice moment with that. And I think for us it just turned out that it's the stories themselves are more important than become a bigger importance than with the books for adults. You can also have maybe more layers that like graphically are really exciting for an older audience, but this is not something that children really relate to. For them it's about the stories, the characters, the world. So it's a bit different, of course, like how you think the books in the process then.
And also with social media, we get a lot of feedbacks, pictures of kids sleeping with their books, you know, hugging them. So it's very, we get sometimes we get them very fast when the book just came out or they came to a signing. So that's nice to have that connection for sure.
And it's also, is it also a way to, I mean, you're publishing books for adults, to educate the look of kids? Because I meet less and less, but I used to meet people who weren't reading comic books because they never read when they were younger, and they were telling me, okay, I like to like, but I can't read. In fact, I don't know if I have to read the text or look at the drawings, and I know it's great, but I can't read it myself. Is it a way to publish these books also to start to make them read the younger possible, to be the reader of tomorrow for the other books? Is it a question of look education of the look?
Yeah, I think a child can love anything if if you accompany him to it, and if you are guiding him, even some weird image, and it's surely very important to open their mind and their eyes, and we publishers have to make weird books exist so they can be curious of it, and of course the sooner the look is educated, the more vivid and the more dynamic the world will be later. So I think it's the same thing than for the adults. It's always it's a thing also to work with creators, and it's the same answer than before when we were saying we don't think about what they expect. We are thinking about what we can bring, and we are working with illustrators and comics creators that are who they are, and they have their reference, their way of drawing, and it's if it's unknown, way better than if you can have in all the bookstores until now. So.
I think it's important. It's good for the kids to read comics very early. And also there's in Quebec, the government changed some educational rules a few years back, and they opened the door to use comics in school programs. And since then, the market, the readership has exploded in Quebec, following Quebec creators, but other people from everywhere. And it's just important, I think, that the comics can be taught at school. You know, for numerous years, it was considered like a bad influence on kids. Like, if they read comics as kids, they won't end up being readers when they grow older. So, but we know it's not true at all. They will read novels, everything later, but they will keep reading comics, I think. So, since it's been close to 10 years now, we saw the impact immediately. So, I think it's important. Yes.
Yes, I also think it's so nice because you also have the image layer, right? And when you're still learning a language, maybe it can be a richer experience, maybe for some children, to also refer to that and to learn to read that as well, because we are living in a very visual world. And I think it's also good and healthy, the kind of books that we publish. I think they all aim also for cultural richness and diversity, and to show that there is like not the norm family, for example, to give access to experience this through books. And so I think it's good to keep doing that, and to also offering this to young children and to children, not only to adults, but to make it possible for them to connect to that through comics.
Olivier, you were talking about weird books a few minutes ago. Yesterday you were telling me that today it is possible to do these weird books, which wasn't the case. Maybe we were like, the title of the meeting is 20 years of comic books for kids. It is time now where the books you're doing can be made.
Well, I think in the children's literature, you have weird books all over the time. You can. Well, we are doing small patrimonial books too, and finding some really surprising books, even from 50, 60, or 80 years ago. The thing is, in France, anyway, we have a real solid and fantastic network of bookstores, and with a lot of curious librarians, and well, it's because of they people that we can do nearly what we want, and we will find some people loving our work enough to find readers for it. And the more you have, well, if a country has more and more librarians and curious ones, you can be more creative. It's fundamental to support all the chain and the creative chain.
We are here in Bologna. We were seeing pages of Sophie Guérive. We can see an exhibition of Sophie Guérive here. Can you just tell us a few words quickly about Le Club des Amis, because there was Tulip, series by Sophie Guérive, and she did for 4048 Le Club des Amis, the same characters but younger. How it came? It's when you decided to create 4048, it inspired her? How it came?
I think all these ideas came quite the same time. Basically, when we started to have kids, she, us, and okay, let's do a children's books collection. Oh, I have children, let's do children's books. And I think it's, well, I'm very glad as a dad to talk with what I'm doing each day with my daughters, and I think it's quite the same for the illustrators too. It can be very abstract for them. I'm doing comic books about World War II. I don't want you to see them. You're too young, and it's well. Our work is what we are doing every day, every hour, and if we cannot share it with the people around us, it's kind of frustrating too. So I think for our part, anyway, all the 4048 adventure, it comes when we started to be parents. So
I see it's almost time to quit. Do you have maybe questions? In good English or in bad English, it's good. No? No question? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks to you. Thank you.
Thank you.